So we have been studying through 1 Peter, and today we're looking at 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 22. It's also what our small group lessons are designed around. But before I jump into kind of the heart of the lesson this morning, if you read 1 Peter 3, 8 through 22, and if you haven't read it yet, I know you're going to read it later. I know that as soon as you do that, you're going to get a question. And I thought, some of you already have this question on your mind because you have said, well, I hope you talk about this when you talk about 1 Peter 3. Well, we'll talk about it. The verses are 18 through 22. So this is an aside before we get into the sermon, okay? For Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive by the Spirit, through whom he went and preached to the spirits in prison who disobeyed long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. Now, if you're like me and you read that, immediately you start thinking, okay, where does that fit in and how did that happen? Who, what, when, and where? So I'm going to confess this morning before I tell you what I think, I really don't have a clue. I don't. I think I have kind of a clue, but here's what I think. Who went and preached what Jesus did? Who did he go preach to? Well, he preached to the spirits. What does that mean that he preached to the people who died when Noah built the ark and the flood came? Well, the problem with that a little bit is spirits usually is not used for human beings. It's usually used for angelic beings, those like people, those things that are the angels and the cherubim and the seraphim, those kind of things. So, well, it probably not that he spoke to people. Well, what did he say? So there's the thought, what he went to those people who were disobedient then, and so then they got a chance to repent. The text never says that. So I'm not going down that path because I don't think that's what happened. I think what he preached, there are two things to preach. One, you can preach the message of Jesus, the gospel that we preach. The other thing is the word to preach actually means to proclaim something. And I think what Jesus was doing was proclaiming his lordship, proclaiming who he was. Even to those spirits who disobeyed long ago. And and we read in 2 Peter, they're in prisons. And so when did he do it? I mean, did he do it? Well, did he do it like incarnate through Noah when Noah was building the ark? Well, that's a possibility, but it doesn't really seem to fit the text. Did he do it? Oh, it was the 3 days that he was in the grave. So in those 3 days, he went and preached to spirits who were in prison. Kind of, maybe, possibly. But it also could have been after his ascension. He could, on his way to, when he ascended into heaven, he could have done it then. Jesus has no space and time, by the way. Y'all realize that, don't you? And so, and where did he go? Well, the spirits in prison, probably the underworld, the netherworld, those beings. So, Greg, what do you think happened in 1 Peter 3, 18 through 20? This is what I think. What I think is Jesus went and what he proclaimed was his lordship to spiritual beings who were disobedient to God at some point in the future with Noah. And now, let me tell you how I think that fits into the text, because I think this is the real point. In Jewish thought, there wasn't anybody so sinful as those people who rejected Noah and his preaching because it took him so long to build the ark. So, in fact, in a lot of Jewish writings, it says about those people, they had absolutely, there is no chance that they could ever enter into any kind of afterlife. And I think what is happening with this, with God, and I think what's happening with this is in context, Peter is saying kind of the very worst beings or the very worst things that you can think of, those people have an opportunity to find salvation in Jesus. And I think that's the real course of what he's trying to say, and you'll see that kind of as we go through the text. But I also know that some people aren't going to listen to anything that I say until we talk about those verses, so we're just going to talk about them at the beginning and get that over with. All right? So where are we headed in the sermon? Are y'all just totally confused with that now? It's okay. You can do like this. So what do I think? I think that Jesus, I think the point of that passage is Jesus proclaiming his lordship to everyone who has ever existed, and he did it by his death, his burial, and his resurrection, which is in the context of what he's talking about there. So you got questions about that, come see me. We'll talk about that. Here's what's happening in 1 Peter. How is it that we're supposed to interact with people who disagree with us, or make fun of us, or reject us, or say bad things about us when there's really not any bad things to say? They just make things up that they can say about us. How are we supposed to react to those people? Now, in our world, we have this thing called the cancel culture. Y'all are familiar with that, right? In fact, now I saw there's a movement to cancel the cancel culture. Have y'all seen that? That just seems kind of odd, doesn't it? So we're going to use a cancel culture to cancel the cancel culture. Do you know what cancel culture is? It's where, some of y'all are shaking your head like this. You've seen the effects of it. It's when, let's say that I would make a statement and somebody would disagree with my statement or think it's untrue or unfair, so they would go out in an effort to cancel me. Oh, we're not going to listen to any kind of live stream in Clarksville Highway Church of Christ anymore. We're going to boycott them. We're going to say bad things about them. We're going to stop interacting with those. And is that the way that we go through life? That everybody who disagrees with us, we just instantly, we stop interacting, not having anything to do with them, don't say anything to them, don't talk to them, just go out and say bad things about them. If I were to do that in my life to everybody who said bad things about me, I don't know that I would have any friends left. I think I might be by myself if everybody canceled me. So as Peter is writing this to these Christians who are struggling through life and encountering these people who are treating them unfairly, or being abusive to them, or causing them all types of problems, how are we supposed to interact with people? And it's a very important question, because as we go out in the world, what we're going to find is not everybody agrees with us. Now, there was this guy, Jesus, who one time he made this really great statement. And this is my translation of his really great statement, but this is it. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Now, isn't that a radical thought? What if, now, we're going to confess for a minute, just for a little bit this morning. Have you always done that? Have you always treated people the way that you want to be treated? No. Have I always done that? We're confessing, right? Have I always done that? No, I have not. I have not. But I need to, right? There's a radical concept. So if we go out into life and we treat other people the way that we want to be treated, and then we start interacting with people, even those who disagree with us. I mean, if you look at your Bible, if you look at over these verses 8 through the end of the chapter, most translations will have this caption there, suffering for doing good. Suffering for doing good. How is it that we're supposed to treat each other? He gives this list. We're supposed to be like-minded, have the same kind of mind, same kind of thoughts. We're like-thinking people. Now, as believers in Jesus and the body of the church that meets at Clarksville Highway, should we be mostly like-minded, like-thinking type of people? Yes, we should. Does that mean that we will agree on absolutely everything? No, we won't agree on absolutely everything. I'm just going to tell you up front, that's not going to happen. Even in our eldership, do we all have absolutely the same theological thoughts about everything? No, it doesn't happen. In our church body, if we were starting to ask theological questions, would we have some differences of opinion? Sure we would. But there is some like-mindedness that holds us together, and it's our faith and belief in Jesus as the Son of God. So we're like-minded. Then he uses other words, sympathetic. Sympathetic. That's what comes when you suffer through something together. We become sympathetic. We begin to understand each other. We're loving. He says, brother. The thing that characterizes us is brotherly love. And I just put loving because when he says brotherly love, that means everybody, right? Not just brothers. It means brothers love brothers love sisters, and sisters love brothers, and sisters love sisters. We're just loving. We're supposed to be a loving people. We're supposed to be compassionate. Okay, that's a pretty important word, isn't it? We're compassionate to one another. And we're we're humble. We don't think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. We think of ourselves with respect to our relationship with God and other people's relationship with God. So we have this culture that says, okay, when you interact with each other, if somebody doesn't agree with what you say or doesn't like what you say, then maybe you just quit interacting with those. Maybe you just treat them different, or maybe you treat them bad. And Peter comes along and says, no, when we live in this world, we treat each other with these kind of qualities and these kind of characteristics. And I don't know what just happened, but this doesn't work anymore, Reggie, if you're back there. Okay. So this is what's supposed to characterize us. We're supposed to give blessing. That's what we're called to. We're called to bless people. Not evil for evil, not abuse for abuse, not insult for insult. Now, we're confessing this morning, right? Does anybody struggle with that one? That we're going to give blessing, not evil for evil, abuse for abuse, or insult for insult. So I told you this story before I was up here. I was getting ready to merge where 24 and 65 merge as you're going toward Nashville. Get ready to merge there. And I'm driving there one day, and I'm just kind of minding my own business. I think I was even listening to a Willie Nelson song. And I was driving. I was all happy, and all of a sudden, this lady pulls up beside me. I don't know where she got like a Coke bottle that was still made out of glass. I didn't even know they had those anymore. But she hurled that out of her car at my car. And I was like, what's that all about? Now, what's my first reaction? I am going to chase her down and give her what for that. Because it just went sailing across the front of my windshield. And I was like, man, that was really close. That could have been bad. I wonder what was going on in her life that morning. I wonder if she thought I was a different car that had cut her off in traffic somewhere before. I mean, there's a lot of black Camrys on the road. Is there a possibility? I know it's only a possibility, and it's very slim at that. Is there some possibility that I actually did something that I didn't know that I did? Oh, there's a possibility, because I was listening to Willie Nelson, remember? So I don't know what was happening. But I just know at that moment, the first thing that came into my mind was not blessing. It was the opposite of blessing, right? So you go into life, and this is what is supposed to mark us. We go into a world that mistreats us, but at the heart of that, we're supposed to respond to that with blessing. We're supposed to respond to evil with good, and I think it's probably a challenge for us to do that. So what are kind of some practical ways you can return blessing for evil and abuse? And if you're sitting there thinking and your head's spinning, I hope it is. And you're thinking, well, what does that look like in my life? Well, it can look like a lot of things. It can look like a lot of things. Let's say you're trying to do a good thing for somebody, and they don't appreciate it. Do you continue to do the good thing? Is it about them, or is it about you? How many of you got a spam call this week? Telemarketer. Anybody been asked about their auto insurance? Anybody like those calls? I do not like those calls. In fact, I don't get them anymore because on the iPhone it says silence unknown callers. So let me explain to you what that means on my phone. If you're not in my database on my phone, you better leave a message because I'm not calling you back. Now, if you need something and you're not in my database, so if you actually go to voicemail, if you leave me a message, I will do two things. I will call you back, and I will put you on my contact list so the next time the phone rings. But I try not to get any more car warranty phone calls than I have to take. But then one day I was thinking, you know what? That's somebody's job. It may not be the best job in the world, but it's somebody's job. Somebody's job. Maybe I could be a little nicer. I could try. How about the person who cuts you off in traffic? Or the person who says something bad about you? Somebody that mistreats you in a business meeting. Somebody that says something they weren't supposed to say. Somebody that didn't say thank you when you really thought they should have said thank you. Somebody who just doesn't respond to life the way that you think they ought to respond to life. How about every one of those times that you think, I'm going to, what if we just stop in those times and say, I wonder how I can give back a blessing? You know, what was I called for? The text says I was called to give back a blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may, and not only give a blessing, so that I may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from deceitful speech. He must turn from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer, but the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. What does it mean? Not just to try to find peace, but to pursue peace, to seek it, to look for it. Then he asked this question, and when he asked this question in 1 Peter, I'm like, oh, why did he write that? Because this is what Peter writes. Who is going to harm you if you are eager to do good? Now, we've been doing this 1 Peter study in small groups and on Sunday mornings for quite a while, several weeks. And what have we primarily been talking about? People who are trying to harm you even though you're trying to do good. And then Peter comes along and says, well, who's going to harm you if you're eager to do good? And you want to look at Peter and say, everybody that you've talked about. But what does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? I mean, I know we say, well, ultimately, God will rescue. So if God is for us, who can be against us? Is it that type of thought? Or is it this idea that Christians follow Christ's example of suffering and deliverance? Because from then, what he's going to talk about is Jesus. Even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. The one thing that follows all the way through the text is simply this: you always do what is right. If you don't get anything from 1 Peter besides that, in this whole study we've done, I want you to get that. You always do what is right. No matter what anybody else is doing, or what anybody else thinks, or what anybody else says, or how somebody else tries to influence you, you always do the right thing. And if you do that and you suffer for that, then you are blessed. And you don't fear them. You don't fear them. You're not frightened by them. Because they really can't do anything to you. I mean, well, Greg, they can take my property. Yeah. They could beat me up. Yeah. I mean, are there physical things that people can do that harm us? Yeah. Ultimately, where is our victory? It's in Jesus. Even if it cost us our life, the victory is still in Jesus. But as we go through this world, what we're trying to do is always do the thing that is right. And we're always prepared to give an answer. If somebody says, then why do you do the thing that's right? Well, let me tell you about Jesus. When I speak mean about you, why is it that you always do something nice for me? Let me tell you about Jesus. Why is it that life just never really seems to ruffle your feathers the way it ruffles my feathers? Let me tell you about Jesus. But you do it respectfully and with a clear conscience. And you know why? It's those passages we started with. For Christ, the NIV has died, and I wish they had used the English Standard Version word of suffered so it would keep the theme all the way through. So Christ suffered for sins, once for all. Let me ask you this. When Christ suffered for sins, did he suffer unjustly? Yeah. Did Jesus do anything to deserve death on the cross? No. But he suffered once for sins. The righteous for the unrighteous. Oh, so when Christ suffered for sin, was it because I was just right on the cusp of being really, really good and I just needed that one little push over? No, it wasn't. No. When Christ suffered for your sin, what kind of person were you? You say, well, I wasn't born yet, Greg. Oh, no, but you, it's all still about you. What kind of people? Were we righteous? Did Jesus come because we were righteous? No. He suffered the righteous for the unrighteous to bring us to God. To bring us to God. Did we deserve that? No. No, we don't deserve to be brought to God. What we deserve is punishment of God. That's what we deserve, but we don't get what we deserve because of the faith in Jesus. So this Jesus, who was put to death in the body, and raised by the Spirit, that Jesus, that is the Jesus who came to die for us. That is the Jesus that came and suffered for us. And if we're the follower of Jesus, then we do the same thing that Jesus did. We follow His example of suffering and deliverance. And who did He come to save? Who was it? I think Peter's saying, even to those who were kind of following Peter's thought, who were Jewish, even, the worst ones you could think of. The worst ones you could think of. That's who He came to save. And so when we go through life and we're trying to follow His example, we're trying to show who we are. We have to understand that the world's not always going to respond to us the way that we want the world to respond to us. The world's not always going to think that we're just the greatest thing that came along. Don't you love it when Jesus comes along? What does Jesus say the world's going to do with us? Y'all can answer, it's okay. What does Jesus say? Going to hate us. Going to mistreat us? Most likely. Why? Because of who we follow. But the beautiful part, I think, of 1 Peter 3 is this water that symbolizes baptism that now saves you, not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a good conscience toward God. It saved you by the resurrection of Jesus. Before you get all theological with all of that, and you think you get all theological with the spirits in prison and the baptism, I think this is the very core of what he's trying to say. In God's patience, any person can find salvation. Anybody. God waited patiently in the days of Noah. You ever thought about that? Why did He wait patiently? Had it been you, do you think you would have waited patiently? No, you would not have. God waited patiently. 1,000 years like a day, and a day like 1,000 years with the Lord. Why? Because He's waiting. He's patient with us, wanting us to find salvation that has come through Jesus. So when we go out and we treat people well, even if they're not treating us well, ultimately, what is our goal? Salvation. That is the why. Not just so we can say, well, we treated them the way Jesus would have treated them. No, our goal, that's why we're prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks. Our goal of treating people well is to help introduce them into the greatness of who Jesus is. And that's the real challenge in life, because that's totally different than the world reacts with one another, and we're called on to be something incredibly different. Because ultimately, I know somebody asked me this week, he said, are we through with the submit word for a while? Hope we're past submit word. No. Because in verse 22, who, meaning Jesus, has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand with angels, authorities, and powers submitting to Him. Everything submits to Jesus Christ. He is the Lord and the King. And when we live in this life, our mission is to interact with people in a way that shows His greatness and His power and His majesty and His love and His forgiveness. And if that means we take abuse, even when we don't deserve abuse, we would do that by giving back a blessing. It means that when people treat us in a way that we don't think we ought to be treated, we still try to treat them with kindness and love and sympathy and compassion. Now, let's be honest, is it a struggle sometimes? Yeah? Yeah. Should we probably circle all of these verses in our Bible and read them at least once a week? Most likely. Preacher included, right? But then you ask yourself, well, who am I? Who am I? A follower of Jesus. you ever look around at people and you look past the outward appearance, or maybe their representation of who they are, or how they present themselves, or how they're dressed, or how much money, or skin color, or where they came from, whatever divisions you use in life? Do you ever look at people and then all you see is just a soul? And you ask yourself, when this world is over, where will that individual be? When I am celebrating with Jesus in the kingdom, will they be there with me? Of the things that I could give them, of all the gifts I might present them with, what is absolutely the greatest gift that I could give? And you remember that the greatest gift that you can give anyone is to help them find faith in Jesus. And Peter is saying, when you go through this life, treat everyone in such a way that you have an opportunity to teach them about faith in Jesus Christ, because that is the most important thing. And if you haven't found that faith, if you haven't given your life to Christ, if you haven't confessed, repented, baptized, if you're not living